So, hi, welcome back to this episode of the Media and Content Business. And this week I have with me Harish. And Harish is the co founder of CTQ Compounds. And first of all, thanks a lot, Harish, for coming down here and taking time out to, speak to me.
Hi, Jugal, and thanks again for actually having me here. So, recorded quite a few podcast episodes. It's good fun to be on the other side for a change.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So for guys who don't know, CTQ basically means choose to think,
That's right.
and CTQ compounds from a layman's perspective helps you helps you build up the habit of reading so that you become more smarter, more wise. It helps you up level. But Harish, I'm going to leave that to you. What is it exactly that CTQ does?
Yeah. So it's a longish story. So since we have some time, let me go down that route, right? CTQ stands for Choose to Think. We've been running Choose to Think, I and Ramanand, since 2014, and we've always had a lot of interest in things like habit building and reading and learning. Most of us at CTQ are quizzers, but one thing that we had noticed was that many of our employees were not really interested in reading a lot of business slash non-fiction kind of stuff, right?
Okay.
They were well read otherwise, but there were quite a few things that he and I would know and would intuitively, instinctively understand, and others would not. So this was something which was at the back of our minds. We had signed up for Blinkist, the book summary app,
Right.
and even the two of us had actually not done justice to Blinkist. And so two three things in parallel that were going on, right? So one was this thing gnawing at the back of our minds that we are not reading enough, though we were quite well read. um, the other thing was that we had done some work around habit building. So we figured out. So we studied habit building. We took a course with Professor B.J. Fogg from Stanford, who talks a lot about micro habits, tiny habits. So we did that course, and we thought, what's the best way of actually implementing that? And around that time, it was end of December. So just on a whim, we said, let's start this as a New Year resolution, where we
Okay.
will, try to break this whole process of habit building into two,
Okay.
three parts, right? So one is curation of what we want to read. So since we
Okay.
have this app and we're not doing good justice to the subscription, let's read. And we said, whoever wants to join within CTQ, you can join us. Harish and Ramanand are going to be reading every day. And we said, we'll do this routine where every day after we read, we will do this, yes. And, that's the whole point of building that, tiny habit, right? That you're supposed to celebrate. And it has to be a physical cue. So we said, we're going to do all these things. So whoever wants to join, let's get started, and we can do this as a group. We said we'll post this on a WhatsApp group. We created a separate group for this, and since it was a fun experiment, and we do a lot of these things, at CTQ, we actually started posting about it on social media as well. And people said, oh, we also want to be a part of this. How can we join this? And we started posting every day that this was, one takeaway from the book, and all of that. And people were very happy, and they were actually missing out. So they said, we also want to be a part of it. We said, no, this is Blinkist app, and we've signed up for the subscription. This is not something which we can share like that. So, and we
Right.
said, let us first figure it out, what we are doing. So we did this over, 4 to 5 months, and we figured out, how to actually build this habit. We had a few challenges initially. Couple of people dropped off for a couple of days. We changed themes. We rotated, who will curate the books. Somebody wanted to do more of food related books, and somebody wanted to do more of science and all those things. And we figured out what is required to get this habit.
Okay.
We also got a bit obsessive about it, where we said, okay, now we should compound everything. Right now, it's we figured out how this habits compound. So
Right.
let's start a compound for writing. Let's start a compound for working on some product idea, this and that. And then we actually figured out what works and what doesn't work.
Okay.
And over 6 months, so this demand from outside CTQ was getting more and more vocal that we also want to be part of this. We know you guys, do a lot of good curation. So then we said, okay,
Right.
let's start something. And we said we will curate content because we
Okay.
generally read a lot. So we said we will
Okay.
curate content and we will share this on a WhatsApp group, and we will do this as a cohort. So
Okay.
around June or July, I think 2018 is when we started this. We thought maybe 4 or 5 people will sign up, and our quorum that we thought of was 8 people. If we said if 8 people sign up, then we will go ahead. Otherwise, we'll just return the money to whoever pays. And since we were doing compounds, and compound comes from compounding interest and all of that, right?
Right.
So we
Right.
said let's put it up out and see what happens. And we had 24 signups, right? And we said okay, 24. Jugal,
Wow.
I couldn't hear you. Sorry.
Just 24 signups, you said.
Yes, 24 signups within 2 to 3 days, right? And these were people who had been following us on social media, friends, friends of friends, and all of that. The minute we said we are launching something, people signed up. So it's 24 people, we need to put them in groups or cohorts. So then I think Ramanand and I were traveling for some corporate workshop somewhere, and we said compounds hai, so what should we come up with? He said let's pick something where we'll call them something, and we came up with the periodic table element names. So we said okay, the first three are hydrogen, helium, lithium. So those are the three, first three cohorts. So that's how we started. And initially it was all about habit building.
Okay.
The promise to people was that we will help you build a habit of reading, and we said
Okay.
we will do the curation. We will send you one article every day, and
Right.
you have to read, and you have to say done on the group that I have finished reading, because that
Okay.
sort of completes the loop. And we said there'll be some penalties to start with, and if you don't read, we will take you out of the group and this and that. We were a bit naive. It was more about habit building. Try to pick up all those nudges that we could think of.
Right.
It started off as a pure habit building thing. Then we realized 6 months, so we would start doing cohorts, so hydrogen, helium, lithium, then beryllium, boron, carbon, all those elements came in. Over the last 2 to 3 years, the identity of CTQ compounds has evolved a bit. So after the first couple of cohorts, some people said, "Yeah, this is great. You're giving us great content, but we're not
Okay.
that interested in reading, say, content about Africa, right?
Okay.
I'm a hardcore business person. I would want to read more about business and professional articles, and not really the science and culture kind of articles, because
Okay.
initially the promise was that we will give you a very diverse set of articles, and articles were not more than 15 minutes, and the whole point was build that reading muscle. Even if it's not
Okay.
of your interest, read it, because if you get through it, there'll be something that you can connect. That was the
Correct.
promise with which we started. So
Right.
then later we sort of moved the positioning of CTQ compound. So now it's more about curated content. So we have people from the first few cohorts who have remained. They have done 3 4 seasons now, and
Okay.
that they're part of these evergreen cohorts that still continue, and it's become a
Okay.
part and parcel of their lives now. So yeah, that's the long and short of the DU compounds.
Wow, that's awesome. I think you know what, you've answered a lot of questions that I wanted to go about. So that's really great. But Harish, just wanted to there's this question that came in my mind when you were saying,
Hmm.
um, over a period of time, you've built up that brand that you are the perfect curator, right? Um,
Yeah.
because what happens is that with so many people these days trying to curate content, but the idea is, why should I listen to that person,
Hmm. Hmm.
right? Like, the other person needs to be a brand
Hmm.
for me to follow, something like that. Were there initial hiccups that you guys also faced? Because the fact that you're curating something, you have to have some level of authority, some brand, that okay, there are followers there and they're saying, okay, he's recommending that.
Right.
Did you hiccups there? What was the journey like from that angle?
Yes. So it's a very good question, Jugal, and I think we've seen that ourselves. If we have to go and pick somebody's, recommendation, we would first see what is that person standing, right? So
Okay.
I'm sure this must have been a question for many people who signed up initially with us as well. We were lucky because we have some body of work, some sort of reputation over the last couple of decades because of our quizzing and all the things that Ramanand and I have done since late 90s, right? So people had already sort of associated this, I don't know if that's a word, well-readness with us, that yeah, these guys
Okay.
have diverse interests, and because the kind of stuff that we would talk about on social media, they would know that yeah, there are things which these people come across which doesn't come in our regular feeds. And initially we made it very clear as part of our messaging that we are going to give you articles which are timeless wisdom, which is which are from sources that are not part of your regular feed, right? I mean, we are not going to send you something which is very current news. It's not about the news cycle. Even if it's a mint article, it's going to be about why Jhansi lies in there's this part of MP and UP,
Right.
right? So there's a very interesting story why it is located there, right? In the map. So things like that, right? Or something to do with the seed vault. Now that's completely timeless, and you would want to read about it. There's something which is of interest, but that is not going to come in your regular feed, right?
Okay.
So that was something which helped. The past sort of reputation helped. So the initial few people who joined were all because they sort of knew us, and then because they would go and talk about these kind of articles, their friends would say, "Oh, where did you come to know about this?" So that's how it started. So it's a big word of mouth that has been the primary sort of thing for
Okay.
us at the start, at least.
Okay, awesome. Like you mentioned, these are very different articles from sources which you would not normally consume. There is this app called Pocket.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think that's a
Yes.
yeah, bookmarking app. Now, I really love that because they send daily or probably in a week they send 3 or 4 emails
Hmm.
with curated articles, and those are articles which I would normally not find anywhere and across, right? So you've seen that tech integration happening there in terms of curation, right?
Hmm.
I'm assuming that they'll be picking up the most read ones and so forth because they have all the
Hmm.
data, people saving this and
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
forth, right? Have you guys thought about building up a tech stack behind to kind of do this curation, or are you doing it all manually at the moment or something like
Right. So we debated a bit about this actually, and we took a very deliberate stance that this is going to be human curated. For the reason that we wanted to very deliberately spread the topics. We did not want it to be something which just because you have read, I am going to read it, kind of a thing. Because then what ends up happening is you go deeper and deeper into the same set of things that you have read. It's very difficult to get that left of field topic. And because the way this is done is I'm saying, okay, I'm going to take 15 minutes of your time.
that? Right.
Trust me, I'm going to make those 15 minutes count for you, right?
Okay.
So you're saying that okay, whatever comes from CTQ Compounds is going to be useful and interesting. um,
Okay.
if you look at the scale, sometimes we'll probably be hitting 9 or 9.5 out of 10. Sometimes we'll probably hit 5 out of 10, right? It
Okay.
will be there. But because you're doing it every day, you don't mind, because you say, okay, today may not have been that great, but tomorrow I'm sure there'll be something more interesting, which is why we keep, going for different kinds of themes and topics. There are people, just yesterday or day before yesterday, I was seeing in one of the compounds somebody who's a big convert because his son was the first person to sign up for CTQ Compounds,
Okay.
and everyone in their family has signed up for CTQ Compounds. He has, got some of his friends, and everyone had signed up except for his father, who
Okay.
resisted it for a long time because he said, as a principle, I don't pay for content. right? And I ended up, doing a podcast with him, and sometimes we just give out these, free coupons for CTQ Compounds. So I gave him one. I said I wanted to just come there. He said, no, everyone in the family, my wife, my son, my daughter-in-law, everyone loves this. So let me just try it out. And since then, he said, okay, now I'm a convert. Now I'm going to pay for this. So he was saying that, yeah, I don't like these, articles about Michelin starred restaurants and all. But he still reads it, right? He has clearly said that he doesn't like it. But he knows that it's not like every day it's going to be about, Michelin restaurants, right? So that's how he takes it. And most people, they take it because even, had this not come from CTU Compounds, he would have probably seen that article on a pocket. He would have seen the headline and he said, yeah, I'm not going to read it because it's not of my interest, right? But because now they're part of this cohort or cult, if you want to call it, they know that it is
Right.
their job to read it, right? I mean, they've signed up for it. It's like a
Right.
ritual. So they will read it. And our belief is that you keep reading these kind of diverse articles, your worldview will expand, right?
Sure.
Otherwise, you want to stick to the, areas of comfort, right? I want to,
Yeah.
yeah,
I think that's really amazing because we are living in a very algorithm driven world.
yeah,
Everything is being run by algorithms, and surprisingly, everybody's seeing the same thing, following the same thing. If everybody's right, all of a sudden everybody's right. If everybody's left, and we're living in very polarized times, I would say,
correct.
because of the
Yes,
algorithms.
yes.
This is great. But tell me something about the curation.
Hmm.
Uh, when you curate the content, right? Have you, not faced in any issues in terms of a lot of platforms locking down their content?
Yeah, it does happen. In fact, sometimes articles which were free earlier, later go behind the paywall. So if
Right.
that happens, then we have to replace the link for the day. But again, that is something which we all, that's interesting that you bring that up, because initially people would ask us that, oh, this content is already free, then why am I paying you for this?
I
So so I said, yeah, it is available, but have you read it? So they'll say, yeah, yeah, somebody will send us some links and we'll read it. I said, yeah, you will be, if I, in fact, I'm going to list down the sources from which I'm going to source the articles. But I guarantee you that after the first 2 or 3 days, you're not going to read it, because you'll binge read once, twice. You'll probably read for 2, 3 hours. You'll say, yeah, these are great articles. But later, life comes in the way, right? You
right,
want to read, but you don't read. So our approach has been, take the 15-minute approach, take the drip irrigation mode. Don't try to overdo it, because 15 minutes every day is much better than reading for 2 hours on 2 days and then completely forgetting about it, right? So that was one question that had come to us, that these articles are for free, right? So we
right,
deliberately choose articles which are free, and there
right,
is a lot of great content out there which is available for
right,
free as well.
right,
Sometimes there are articles which go behind the paywall, then we have to replace that, but I think there's so much of good content already. See, the problem today is not access, right? Maybe
right,
20, 25 years ago, when we were still in the world of libraries, where you had to go to a library, sit there to sit in the reference section of a British
right,
library. Access was a problem. Now access
right.
is not a problem. The problem is of plenty, and then you
Exactly.
get stuck, because there's so many interesting podcasts, so many interesting links to read, and I have only that much time, right?
Right.
So instead of trying to maximize everything, our belief has been that do something, but do it on a daily basis, and it will compound over a period of time.
Right. Right. It's again living in times of information overload.
Yes, yes,
Yeah. So, I think this curation, tell me something. Now, I see that there are a lot of CTQs that are there, right? A lot of, there is something called, something for kids. There is something future stack for digital trends. And
yeah,
like you mentioned, it's no longer limited to just one history and culture. Now you're
correct,
across
correct.
from
Yeah,
the business to kids.
yes, yes.
How big a team are you guys who looks into all this curation or
So,
overall?
yeah, so choose to think, per se is a very small team. We are around 6 to 7 people who are like part of the close group, and we work with a lot of freelancers who are contributors in various, and this is not just for CTQ Compounds, even on our corporate work that we do around culture and learning.
Okay.
It's the same team that sort of runs everything under Choose to Think and CTQ Compounds. We have a lot of freelancers who work with us. Some of them also end up contributing some interesting links. So
Okay.
initially it used to be me and Ramanand who would sit and curate content, and then we said no, this is not something which is going to be sustainable. So we use
Right.
technology in some way, like something like a Pocket helps us in getting started.
Right.
We don't pick articles from Pocket, but
Right.
it sort of helps us go down the rabbit hole. One link leads to the other, and we say, oh, this is good. I think what helps is, even if we were not doing CTQ Compounds, you would still have been reading all those things, because curiosity is something which is ingrained in us, right? Curiosity is the main value for Choose to Think.
Right.
That's something which we would have done anyways. Now what we do is we bookmark it. We There are a lot of good articles which we feel should be shared, but then we also have this sort of constraint that it should be something which can be consumed within 15 minutes, because
Right.
that's a message that we want to stay consistent with, saying that because what happens is, if it is more than 15 minutes, you'll say, yeah, this is very good, but let me park it. I will read this when I have time, or when I'm in that frame of mind, right? And that never happens, not because
Exactly.
you don't have the intent, but just life happens, right?
Right.
So we say
Right.
15 minutes is something that you can always say, I can do this right now, whether I'm at the bus stop, or I'm waiting for a meeting, or whatever. You can spare 15 minutes. If it's more than 15 minutes, you feel, yeah, nahi, let's park this, right? So
It's right.
so that's why there are some articles. So there are these kind of criteria that also go into curation.
Okay.
How accessible the article is, even the writing style, uh, and the duration, or rather the length, is definitely something that plays a big role in picking these articles.
Right, right. This is very interesting. So I really want to come into your TG part, right?
Yeah.
Because there are a lot of things which do not make sense from an Indian perspective, to be very
Yes.
honest.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, you ask for the daily reader, it says 10,000 bucks you have to sign up for.
Yeah.
A minimum program is, I think, 3,000, which is for kids, right?
Hmm.
And it just covers 6 months, right? You've already The one major question that I had was that people are going to be asking that question, that this already is for free. Why do I pay for someone curating it? But you've kind of answered that question, that it's more about building that habit,
Hmm.
right? So that's a very important question which you've taken care of. I want to understand who your TG is, because what the plans that you have are relatively expensive from a subscription scenario,
Right.
right? And so just because the TG who is buying it really has to find a lot of value in it.
Hmm.
So if you
Hmm.
can just shed some light on your TG, who are these guys who are actually buying? How long do they stick around for, and so forth? And what their behavior has been when they come on to
Yeah.
the compounds.
Right. Yeah. So, when we started, I remember in the first cohort, or rather the 2.5 cohorts that we had everyone from a senior management guru,
Okay.
to a child psychiatrist, to someone who was preparing for his GRE, because he said, I want to read more non-fiction and I want to build this
Okay.
habit. So we were completely, lost, that who are we actually doing this for? Because
Right.
initially the people who signed up were people who knew us, right? So these were friends, family, who sort of knew about us. So that's why that explained the sort of diversity in the backgrounds of people who had signed up. But over a
Right.
period of time, we have managed to again narrow this down to um, I would say busy corporate professionals, people who are lapsed readers, as we call it. These are people
Okay.
who used to read a lot, in their school and college time, and then suddenly felt that yeah, there's too much work-related stuff, and they understand that they're missing out on something because they're not able to read, from varied sources. So these are people who are sort of frustrated with the mainstream media. When I say mainstream media, I'm assuming everything from your news websites to links that come on their, you know, alumni WhatsApp groups and all those things as well. Because it's, if you think of it, there's going to be a very small, narrow set of pieces that you are looking at, right? Um, it'll be the same 10 odd TED talks that will come. It'll be the same sort of Better India kind of articles, which are great, by the way. But it's the same kind of thing, right? Because I either because of algorithm or whatever, everyone is gravitating
Reading
towards the same set of content. So people who realize this, right, and that is a very difficult sort of segment for me to define, because it doesn't get defined in terms of age. To a certain extent, these are probably 30 plus that you are looking at.
right.
We have very few who are under 30, because they're not people who will have the time to do this, right? So there will be
Exactly.
30, 32 plus, till around 45, 50 typically. That's the demographic. We
Okay.
have both men, women, a lot of people, Indians, who are living outside the
Living.
country, right? Over the last couple of years, our primary customer acquisition channel has been the Seen and Unseen podcast, right? Because Amit Verma was a subscriber of ours, and he shared it with his, his cohort of people who were
Okay.
part of the clear writing community, and a bunch of people signed up. So he said, why not, do this in a more formal, organized way? So let's put up a spot on his podcast. And to be honest, the way he talks about it, it's more like a testimonial than a commercial spot, because he's been through it himself, right? So a lot of people actually sign up from there as well. So these are people who are interested in long form podcasts, and Amit Verma's podcasts are like 4.5, 5 hours long, right?
Right.
So people understand the value of expanding their worldview by reading from varied sources. So that helps, because these are people who are almost self-selected, right? Somebody who's listening to a 4 hour long podcast over the weekend knows that, yeah, I need to do this, and they're not really pushing for this quick 2 minute noodle kind of
Right. Right.
news cycle.
I, I think you're going after a very niche audience, right? I
Yes.
think you've cracked that because education in itself in India is limited to either tuitions
Yeah.
or to getting into IITs and getting into government jobs and so forth, right?
Correct. Correct.
There's
Yeah.
nothing else to it.
Yeah.
Hardly people are going to pay for, someone curating articles so that my knowledge increases. So,
Right.
hats off to you guys, with what you've done. Now, I was actually coming to this question of the growth. So, the first initially you said you had people coming in via word of mouth, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Just one question. You started with 24 subscribers in 2018.
Right.
Any ballpark figure where you stand today across all your compounds?
We have, I think, 600 plus subscribers now across all our compounds. We
Okay.
probably have around, 20 odd subscribers who are on their fifth or sixth season now. So each season is around 6 months. So these are people who have been, continuing from the first two, three. So from carbon, oxygen, those kind of, groups are also there. And
Okay.
then we, over the last year, we started these smaller compounds which are more focused on things like digital trends and future stack.
Right.
So because people
Right.
said, yeah, this is great, I really value what you are doing, but can you do something more specific? In fact,
Okay.
Ridiculous, which is the compound for kids, that also came as a demand from our customers. They said, we want our children to get started.
Right.
They are great at reading fiction, and they're probably now at that stage where they should start reading nonfiction. Can you suggest us, because otherwise they just get lost. Nonfiction seems so boring, they get turned off, and then they never come back to nonfiction till they're 30. So can we
Right.
introduce them to nonfiction in a good, interesting way? So that's
Right.
how
Right.
Ridiculous also happened. So yeah, these are, and we keep experimenting, we keep trying out different
Right. Right.
themes for these shorter
Right.
compounds.
Okay, but Harish, tell me something. So you started with 24. You said that the growth came from word of mouth as well.
Yeah, yeah,
Now you've also mentioned Amit Verma's podcast as
right.
a major growth
Yeah.
acquisition channel. Anything else that you guys have done to kind of get more subscribers in?
To be honest, we tried a few things. We tried to speak to other, podcast hosts because this was working very well. We tried small experiments. None of them worked. To be honest, we didn't get a single sign up from any of the other podcasts. We tried a few newsletters as well, and these were good, interesting newsletters. But
Okay.
somehow none of them worked. So we said, fine, this is what it is. This is what it is. We tried a bit of digital marketing as well. Again,
Right.
I don't know if our efforts were not directed well, or if this product doesn't lend itself to customer acquisition through digital marketing. But again, that was not something which worked for us. So we said we'll just stick to word of mouth. We keep telling our subscribers, present and past, that yeah, we are launching new compounds. A lot of times
Right.
people come back, and Amit's
Podcast.
podcast is one steady source
So
of signups for us.
okay, okay. How many resubs that you've seen? That is like from the initial people that sign up
Hmm,
with you.
hmm,
The
hmm.
same any percentage that you guys have calculated that these 67% people keep on coming back or something like that?
So I'll probably end up giving a very ballpark figure for this. Out of 600 plus, there must be at least say 400 who are either subscribing for the next season of Daily Reader or subscribing to a different compound. So these are people who were started off on Daily Reader. They said, "Yeah, this is great. I want to do Future Stack now. Okay, Future Stack digital trends. Let me do that, or let me sign up for Iconic India for my kid." That
Right,
way. But maybe 400, maybe 300. I don't have the exact number, but it is
right,
a significant number of people who see, because what happens is when they sign up, right, there is a lot of friction, and very deliberately there is a lot of friction, right? If you look at price point, and if you look at the whole process, we tell you, boss, you have to read every day, be
right,
prepared for this. So it's a big call that people
yes,
are taking. So once they
right,
come on to the other side, they realize that yeah, this is a good thing, whatever I'm doing, right? So the logic of having a frictionful onboarding process is good in that way, because we did not want it to be a 200 rupee sign up and then you forget
right,
about it, right? Because you don't
right,
value it if it is
exactly,
that low. Because you are
right,
signing up at this amount, it has to be a very thought through decision. And again,
exactly.
that was we deliberated on it and got to this. We I think when we started, the price was 3,000 in 2018.
Okay, okay,
And now we are at 10K. So it
then.
was very deliberate to keep ratcheting it up.
Right, right, right. Yeah, that's very true. People, whoever is paying that kind of money will be very invested in
Yes.
kind of being involved
Yeah,
in
yeah,
this,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
And it, like you said, that friction is there. But have you by any chance? See, I'll tell you what. From the outside, it looks like such a simple business model. You know what? I'm going to read 50 articles. I'm going to send it out, and people will keep on subscribing. And you know what? The easiest thing that any person will think is, rather than keeping it for 10K, I'll put it for 500 rupees, 200 rupees, like you said, right? So, have you seen that happening? Have you seen number of startups coming in this space trying to do something like this?
To be honest, one of our first subscribers actually started something like this
Okay,
on his own. But again, he was, honest enough to come and tell us that, see, this is what I'm going to do.
right,
And we said, fair enough. I mean, this, even if you go and share the same article, I can't really stop you from doing that, right? I mean, yes, we've put in all the curation effort into it, but it's there. I
right,
mean, it is a free article, available for everyone, and we
right,
have shared the link with you. Now you can do whatever you can
right,
with it, right? There are people who end up doing something like this, but see, the for us, like I said, we would have been doing this even otherwise, right?
right,
And yes, there is some sort of science and thought process that goes into it, science and art, I would say, where there are some articles which, though we love them, just don't qualify to go into the compound, right?
Okay.
So
Okay.
all that also has to be thought through. There are a lot of
Right.
other nudges. We also used to have this sort of thriving community of sorts where we would have a moderator. Over the last 6 months, we are experimenting with an almost moderator less group, right? So we've done all of that also. So somebody trying to ape this, clone this, will have to do all that themselves, right? And we have tried everything on ourselves first, right? So we know what works, we know what doesn't work. We completed around 1600 days of reading a book summary every day myself, right? On Blinkist. I mean, we stopped now over the last 3 weeks because we ran out of books on Blinkist.
That's a new problem that you're mentioning.
Yeah, and Ramanand has been doing Duolingo for I don't know how long, right? So we
Okay.
understand the whole habit building and the curation and all of that. So somebody will have to have that kind of insight into this whole thing to make it
Right.
exactly or do better than this. It's not that
That
easy, I would say, not that easily replicable.
I completely agree with you. But because there's so many similar businesses that I've seen, right, where people have caught on to a niche audience. It seems very easy on the outside. So many mimics come up on the side and offering extremely cheap solutions,
Right.
but inevitably they just close down after a couple of months, weeks,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
At the max, it's like a year. But
Right.
what I want to come towards the end of this podcast. What next for CTQ?
So CTQ compounds. CTQ compounds. Let me
Compounds, that's
stick to
right. Yeah.
CTQ compounds because CTQ is the larger brand. Where we do a
Okay.
lot of corporate work.
Yeah.
Right. So CTQ compounds. We have been debating. Considering whether we should have an app of sorts. Even if we create something using low code, because right now it is on Telegram, right? So initially it
Right.
used to
Right.
be on WhatsApp. Then we said, oh, privacy issues. Let's move to Telegram. Telegram, allows us to do a lot more things. Post polls and things that were not available on WhatsApp earlier, like scheduling content and all that. We moved to Telegram, right?
Right.
So we have debated a lot about whether we should have an app of our own. And every time it used to come down to the point that it's going to be yet another app, right? There's so many apps occupying the phone real estate already. Is this working? Obviously it is working. People are paying for it. You can say that it is like an MVP which has become a product, right?
Right.
so
Right.
so the app has been on our horizons for a long time, but I don't see that happening anytime soon.
Okay.
Because again, there's no compelling reason for us to actually move from Telegram to an app unless the government sort of bans Telegram in India or something like that. But otherwise, we should be good with Telegram. In terms of themes, we keep experimenting with a lot of things. So earlier, we actually had a product called as Iconic India,
Okay. Yeah.
which we used to send PDFs over email. So we converted that into a compound just to see, because we had all the content with us. So this is about iconic aspects of India. So if we see enough people sort of signing up for it as a compound and looking at these things, then you can do iconic China, iconic Russia, iconic Ukraine, iconic UK. That's just waiting to happen there, right? And what we have figured out is the curation is something which we understand very well, right?
Right.
And creating this sort of drip irrigation, mode is something which we work well with. So now, if you look at things like AI for non techies, right? This is something which I often come across, right? I mean, these days, people from say HR, right? The CEO will say, I want to incorporate AI into hiring, right? And these people have no background of technology, but they're supposed
Right.
to, actually at least know what needs to happen, how they can utilize or how they can, use AI in their hiring processes or HR process. So what are the
Right.
options before them? Either they go take up a course on Coursera, or they go meet a friend who's an AI expert and say, just explain this to me in 2 3 hours, right? Those are the only two options for them. One is probably too shallow, the other is too intense. They need something which is in between, right? So if you
Right.
think of it, there are a lot of these kind of people who are novices in a specific area, need working knowledge in
Right.
a variety of topics these days, right?
Right. Right.
What is available in the market is a deep dive. I don't want a
Right.
deep dive for them, right? This HR person needs to know how she or he can use AI in hiring or in HR processes. She doesn't need to go and create AI algorithms, right? So
Right.
that's a challenge for them. So if you
Okay.
look at that as a universe, then you have everything from somebody wants to understand podcasting in India, right?
Right. Right.
I
Right.
can actually curate good articles. I can pick an interview of yours. I can talk about, there's an article about Pratilipi, I will share that. You get a
And
sense of what the space is, right? now
right.
now
Right.
just extend this, the world is out there.
Right, right, right. But what are the early signs that you're seeing? You've already started certain things, right? You have, like, let's say the iconic culture. Are you seeing any traction there from the audience, or even, let's say, an AI program that you've spoken about? Something you have something called digital trends, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So,
So
uh,
those, sorry.
yeah, sorry, sorry.
So yeah, so things which again tie back to something tangible, something which is very popular these
Professional,
days, like future stack for digital trends, gets more traction than something like Iconic India. Uh, Again, because it's clearly aimed at professional growth. So these are people who sign up are probably people who are either suffering from the fear of missing out, that
right?
I was not in college when these things came up, so I have no idea about what these trends are all about. And for the last 10 15 years, I've been working on some other technology, or I've been working in some other function, and my peers or these people who are younger than me are going ahead because they know about these topics and I don't. So how can I
Right,
address this? So if I find out about future stack for digital trends, I sign up for it immediately, right? Because they
right,
feel that they
right,
are missing out on something. Or like the HR use case that I spoke about, that this is a
right,
very clear demand in my job, not from a future perspective, but a very here and now problem, and I don't know enough about it. Can I get started? Those kind of things sort of get more traction than something like Iconic India, which probably needs some patron, right? Somebody needs to say that, yeah, this is good for you, you should do this. If it is part of some socio political cultural story, then it will
right.
probably have more traction. But yeah, future stack for digital trends is something which it's like the exam thing that you were referring to earlier, no? Not just for kids, even
Exactly.
for adults, it's the same.
I've actually worked with Upgrad, and we used to interview the people who signed up,
Right.
right? And demands were as tangible as it
Correct.
could be.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's very unfortunate, but I'll tell you something about. There was this one particular course, for an MBA that
Hmm.
we'd launched with a very premium university, and very few people had signed up for it. And so, we had spoken to a couple of people, just as part of user research as to why have you signed up for it, right? One guy actually told us, and this is how tangible it gets. He said, you know what, dowry, my market rate will go up, after I get this degree,
Yeah.
right? So, that really, that's how tangible people want. But, just one last question to round this off. You mentioned the fact that, so one thing is clear: if something has very tangible results, that is something which will probably get more traction, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, number of things that are tangible are quite high, particularly in the professional and the corporate space.
Correct.
Crypto technology,
Yeah.
blockchain, you have Web3, and so many things. So many concepts which are coming up, right? Uh, how long does it take for you to decide that, okay, I need to launch in this? What are the factors that will make. Are you looking at demand first, that 10 people have spoken to you that, hey, you know what, I want to know about Web3 first, or you decide that, you know what, probably people will need it, let's launch it and see the response? How does that work out?
See, again, that's where I will go back to the advantage that we have of doing this on our own, anyways, right?
Right. Okay.
At Choose to Think, we help teams and individuals build future relevance, right?
Right.
So when I say future relevance, I need to be on top of what are the future trends. We actually have a almost like a private newsletter that Ramanand and I send out to CEOs and decision makers, where we give this sort of set of podcasts, articles, books, book summaries that incite their month. It's called Incite Your Month, which pique the curiosity. So we are doing this anyway. So we generally have a sense of what is the next thing that is going to catch up. For example, in the Incite Your Month mail, I think last year we had spoken about NFTs, much before
Okay.
it sort of became more mainstream, right? So that's something which we are anyways doing. So it gives us an idea that, yeah, this is something which will come up next, so we will talk about it, we will share something like that. And then also, because a lot of the people that we are serving already, they're also on that sort of, I wouldn't say cutting edge or bleeding edge or whatever, but they're also on top of the new trends, right? So some of these things
Right.
also come in from them, saying, can we have something around these kind of topics? And that helps.
Right.
Because for us, if you look at it, see, if you have to create something new which is not of your interest, then there's a lot of effort that has to go in, right? I have to
Right.
think
Right.
what is going to come, and I have to go, and then I have to decide whether this is something for which I'm going to get demand or not. I'm anyways reading all these articles. Ramanan is already reading these articles. We're going to curate. Launching a new compound for us doesn't take a lot of time. So we'll put up out there. At best, we'll put a landing page. People sign up for it. Great. We started the
Right.
whole product like that. So
Exactly.
adding a new compound doesn't
You
have
know,
to stress us.
somehow I keep on having questions for you. Just one last before we end
Sure.
this again, I'm
Yeah.
saying this
Yeah.
word again. Uh, and, people are fed up with the kind of news that they get, particularly in terms of politics,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? There's either right, there's left. There is no real news that's coming
Right.
about, right?
Yeah.
It's just, and there's a very generic question, like, do you see yourself getting into this news section as well? Because honestly, I feel that I want something which is unbiased and which is a lot more in depth rather than just fringe news and state propaganda or whatever it is. Have you guys thought of getting into this uh, political setup?
Yeah, so interesting that you ask us about this, because we read a lot. We are also
Right.
on top of news, right? I mean, we're quizzes, so we are also on top of trivia. This sort of hit us in 2020, when there were people who were hospitalized, family was hospitalized, people were going through bad times, and somebody said that one thing that really keeps me sane during these days is reading the CTQ Compound article, because it's like 15 minutes of me time. So which is when we actually wondered if we should launch a compound of positivity, where it's just about positive news, right? And that's been on the cards for some time, because again, it's a very timeless thing. We can bring these positive stories, and we do come across a lot of these things. Sometimes we've done these themes, we've done a week of positive stories and things like that. But going back to your question, right? You're never going to get completely unbiased articles. Right now, this is our bias, right? There is a
Right.
CTQ bias. Okay, it may not be easy to pin it down to Harish or Ramanand's or Ankita's or Sanasi's or Sirisha's bias, but it is CTQ bias, right?
Right.
There is a
Definitely.
CTQ style, and those are the articles. So it's never going to be like that. We
Makes sense.
personally, what we end up doing is we actually seek out sources that we don't agree with, on a
Okay.
personal level, and we keep reading stuff. And there are articles which I go and read, and luckily, thankfully, I personally at least have friends across the spectrum
Yes.
people from hardcore right to hardcore left to any everywhere in between, right? So it is good to actually exchange views with them as well. So news, probably we are not going to do something which is targeted at news, but we do believe that you should actually expose yourself to different points of view. That's when you're
Right.
going to have a more
Nuanced.
well-rounded view, right? But
Yeah.
I think having the bent of mind or bias in an article versus, you should not mix news with the bent of mind, right? News has to be fact, but then that is not going to happen, right? And given what we understand about mainstream media and their compulsions, and not all of them are out of malintent as well, right?
Right.
It's
Yeah.
just their perspective, it's their worldview. So they
Right.
see the world in that way and they write it like that, right? So that bias is going to be there.
Makes.
So yeah,
Yeah.
we are not going to get into news, but we
Right.
do seek out articles from all schools of thought.
Awesome, awesome. So I'm gonna end this here, Harish, and really thanks a lot for sharing this. And hats off to you guys, for building a niche community and actually monetizing it, and that too in India, because it's very, very difficult to do that, and particularly with the kind of product that you've built and so forth. So good luck for the future, and once again, thanks a lot for coming down and sharing all this with us.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Jugal, for having me here. It was good fun for me to sort of remember all those discussions that we had while designing CTQ compounds, and it was fun for me to just go through the entire life cycle of CTQ compounds for the last 4 5 years now. So
Yeah,
thanks for giving me this opportunity to talk about this. I think you guys are doing a fantastic job yourself. So hats off to you guys also. And like you said, I think in India, being in the content space and creating a viable business in content, anyone thinking about itself should be, you should just go and say thank you, boss. And continuing to do it is even great. And
right.
you guys are doing a fantastic job, so thanks a lot for what you're doing, and of course thanks for giving me this opportunity as well.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.